All right. Hello and welcome to a very special live broadcast. We're doing a special live broadcast with the one, the only, the unstoppable Dr. Terry Wahls. If you've been following content for a while, you know that she is on the front lines of building a evidence base for her protocol and for sort of functional medicine or food as medicine as a way of dealing particularly with MS. And I'm excited because ultimately, I think the most important thing that we can all be doing right now is building the evidence base for the fact that these kind of solutions work. So I think we have some exciting updates here today. So welcome back to the platform, Dr. Wahls.
Hey, thank you, James.
So yeah, let's get into it. So I know you're busy and you're always, on the front lines doing this. Tell us about this data, where it came from, and what you're going to be sharing with us today.
Okay, so people may know that we've done a number of small clinical trials testing the Wahls diet against either a usual diet, so weightless control, or a ketogenic diet. These are all small studies. Consistently, they've shown the Wahls diet to be things that people can adopt, sustain, and when they do, they experience reduced fatigue, improved quality of life, and depending on how long the person does it, improved motor function. This study was a longer study. It was funded by the National MS Society, and we enrolled folks, consented them, obtained baseline measures of walking. So they're in walking endurance for 6 minutes, baseline measures of fatigue as measured by the fatigue severity scale score, that's 9 questions. The modified fatigue impact scale, that's a much longer list of questions, 21. They're a quality of life survey, the MS-54 quality of life survey that has 54 questions in it. And that can be classified as mental health quality of life or physical health quality of life. So people came in, we conducted all of their assessments. We asked them to continue their usual diet. And then we brought them back 12 weeks later and repeated all of the assessments. And that was a really important step because we wanted to that fatigue was stable, quality of life was stable, and walking endurance was stable. We also did the observation phase like that because we saw in all of my other studies that people were so eager to start the study diet that if they were assigned to the control arm, they just dropped out. And so this way we forced everyone to be their own control and have to wait to get the study intervention. Then once they came in for their follow-ups and we randomized them, they were either in the SWANK diet, which is a low saturated fat diet, which by the way, I had followed literally for decades. During medical school, we were all taught low fat was the heart healthy, the best approach to health. So I did that. Or the Wahls diet, which everybody knows, lots of vegetables, no grain, no dairy, no eggs. And we required that people be meat eaters to be in this so they could be randomized to the Wahls diet that did include meat. Now, because we wanted to have the highest probability of a clinical response, for that first 12 weeks, we took out nightshades, so potatoes, eggplants, tomatoes, and peppers. But after the 12 weeks, then we let them reintroduce ingredients, one ingredient at a time per week. So they could, if they were missing tomatoes, they could put tomatoes back in. The next week, they could put in peppers. The next week, they could put in the eggplant. The next week, they could put in the potatoes. So there are 4 measurements: baseline, and again, at 12 weeks, that's our run-in phase. And so then that second measurement is our baseline. We randomize them. We give them either the SWANK diet, low saturated fat, or the Wahls elimination diet. And they have weekly calls with our dietitian, and they can email the dietitian as often as they want to arrange for a phone call, or text to answer questions. They come back after 12 weeks of intervention, repeat all the assessments, and then we ask them to continue the interventions. If you're in the Wahls group, you get to add ingredients slowly back in. And then you come back in another 12 weeks. So now you've had 24 weeks worth of intervention, and we see what happened. Our hypotheses were that, in the main hypothesis, primary outcome was the Wahls group would have clinically and statistically more reduction in fatigue as measured by fatigue severity scale. Our secondary hypotheses were that the more sensitive fatigue measure, modified fatigue impact scale, and the quality of life and walking endurance would be clinically and statistically greater improvements for the Wahls group at 12 and 24 weeks.
So let me just jump in, because you said you started with the MS Society, right? Because that's it. So I know you've had like an interesting relationship with the MS Society over your career. So can you just share a little bit of that history, just for people who aren't familiar? And then, like, what would be, if this were to work, if the study were to work, like, what does it open up on the other side of it for you that isn't open for you right now?
So when I first had my recovery, I had this dramatic reversal of my health by using, what I learned through ancestral health movement, through my review of the basic science and functional medicine. So that, of course, changes how I think about disease and health. I started talking to a local organic grocer, and so they arranged for a local public talk, which we had to move 3 times and keep going to bigger and bigger venues because so many people wanted to come here. And so I gave more talks to more churches then and the community college. And the local MS chapter said, "Hey, Dr. Wahls, would you come speak for us?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, sure." Well, the MS Society was nervous about that. And I guess that's reasonable. They wanted to know what the message was. So their clinical advisory board interviewed me. And they were very alarmed that, because I'm not a neurologist, that I would be giving bad advice. And I said, well, I'm going to tell my story and tell them the research. But by that point, I was doing my first safety and feasibility study. So I'll tell my story. I'll tell them the mechanisms by which I think diet may have an impact. And I'll tell them about the clinical research that's underway. Well, they were alarmed that I was going to create false hope. And they said, like, how would you feel if a neurologist came to talk to your patients about adopting a diet that helped MS? And I said, well, if you were convincing people to eat more vegetables, I would think that's a really great thing. But I want you guys to do what you think is clinically, morally correct. And I need you to know that I'm going to keep, talking to people about what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and the research that I'm doing. So they banned me as a speaker because they thought I was creating false hope and that people would be declining to take drug therapy to implement the Wahls diet. Now, they apparently never listened to any of my talks, because in my talks, I'm very careful to say, I still have MS. I have to manage my disease with diet and lifestyle. And if you abruptly stop your drugs, you can anticipate having a severe rebound and relapse. So if you're going to implement diet, lifestyle, functional medicine, stay on your drugs, work with your prescribing physicians. If you have remarkable clinical success, talk about being transitioned to a less potent drug with fewer side effects. And that, in my personal case, my neurologist supervised my withdrawal from disease-modifying drugs and continues to follow me. So, I had the TED Talk that went viral, that led to the book deal, that was a bestseller, that led, and the MS Society monitors social media because they want to know what their tribe and their constituents are following. And they saw this dramatic uptick in the interest in social media about diet, about exercise and stress reduction, about all these lifestyle factors that I discuss in my book and that I discuss in my TED Talk, all the lectures that I give.
Yeah.
That completely swamped all of the combined talk about disease-modifying therapies. So, the summer of 2014, that was because my book came out in March. That summer, they, I can't remember the name of the woman who tracked me down, got me through the university switchboard, got me on the phone and said that the MS Society was going to have a wellness conference and they would really like me to come be part of that. And I said, well, I'm scheduled to give a plenary talk at another conference. So I'll have to call and talk with them and see if they'll move my plenary talk. I certainly would like to come, but I'm a banned speaker, and unless you stop having me be banned, I'm not going to attend your events. So she was profusely apologetic. They said, yes, she would take care of that. So we'll call me back as soon as I'm not banned. And I will call this other organization and see if I can get my talk adjusted. So the other organization was quite graceful, great, very helpful. They switched the dates for my talk. And then the MS Society stopped banning me. I went down and I was part of this wellness talk. They put me in the dietary subgroup, and I met other MS researchers, other neurologists that were doing diet research, lifestyle research. And I talked with the MS Society that, because I've submitted multiple grants to them before and always got scathing reviews, but it was clear that the reviewers review drug design studies, not modifiable lifestyle studies, and that you cannot possibly do a randomized double-blind control study for a diet study. People know what they eat.
Yeah, exactly. They know they're either eating 9 cups of vegetables or they're not,
Right. You're on a very low fat diet or not. You're on a Mediterranean diet or not. You're on a vegan diet or not. You're on a Paleolithic diet or not. So I said, you need to have people who do dietary intervention studies review the proposals. And I can help you find the scientists who do dietary intervention studies. So we can help you get reviewers. And I can make sure that these are not reviewers associated with the University of Iowa. So that's not a problem. And actually, they were quite receptive to that. I met a number of, so at that conference, I met a number of people from the MS Society. I met their executive director. I met members of their board. And we had really robust conversations about the fact that diet and lifestyle research is complicated. It is hard. There are experts who do that. And this is not in competition with drug development, that some people may get dramatic results with diet and lifestyle and may be able to wean down to much lower cost, less potent and disease modifying drugs, or potentially none whatsoever. We're in complete agreement that we don't want anyone to abruptly go off their drugs. And we're in complete agreement that people should have their disease activity monitored and that clinical decisions from their treating neurology team guide what is the right thing to do. And so I think those conversations made people feel more comfortable, and then helping them identify the scientific experts that could fairly review dietary intervention studies was very helpful. And I was actually very excited after that conference. They did put together some resources for neurologists to talk about various diets that people were trying and the evidence for and against for the benefit of these diets. And they talked about the swank diet, the Paleolithic diet, the Mediterranean diet, gluten-free diets in their handout. That came out in 2015. Great step. The other thing that they did in 2015 was they put out a call for wellness diet and modifiable lifestyle research. So we submitted a proposal, and we proposed, this sort of unusual study design, because I'd already from my previous 3 studies knew that people have such a strong desire to be in the intervention arm that it was going to be very difficult to get people to agree to be in a control arm. So we put everyone through a observation period.
Yeah.
Then we randomize them.
Yeah.
And so it's called a controlled parallel study design. I was very pleased that they accepted that. They wanted us to make a few modifications, which we did do. And we were able then to start that study in 2016.
And so this is the results that you're sharing now of what happened?
This is the results that we're sharing now. Should I?
Yeah, why don't you want to bring up your screen and we can get it on the screen. So it's comparing the Wahls to the Swank, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, pull it up and let's
Okay.
get into it.
We're going to share that.
All right.
And let's see, from this slide, and is this cut off?
No, I could see it. Looks good.
Okay, now what let me go back. Can I go back? Oh, I can't go back.
The bottom, I think you can go back. There you go.
I'm trying to go back. There we go. So here are our main demographics. So the mean age was 45, 40 in the 2 groups between 46 and 47. The predominantly female. We asked about smoking. We asked about alcohol intake. We asked about the BMI and whether or not they were on DMTs and what their mean vitamin D was. Now, statistically, there is no difference between these groups. And that is really important. We enrolled and we had consented 85 folks. So this is the largest group that's been studied to date. Actually, I misspoke. It's 87. 87. So here's our results. And the fatigue severity scale score, now that was our primary outcome. And what we're comparing it to is, do people change between the observation period and the 12-week period? That's the difference between, we'll go back, between the baseline and 12-week period and the baseline and 24-week period. So statistically, there's no difference between Wahls and Swank. Wahls is the yellow bar, Swank is the black bar. What you see, and we're surprised by this, the Swank had a greater reduction in fatigue than the Wahls at 12 groups at 12 weeks. The Wahls had a greater reduction at 24 weeks than at the Swank at 24 weeks. Both groups dramatically reduced fatigue compared to their observation period. Okay. So in one sense, great news. You could adopt a low-fat Swank diet. That's going to be helpful, or the Wahls diet. That's going to be helpful. And so if you have a preference, like I really want to do low-fat, this would tell you that yes, you could do that and experience benefit. Oh, and I should also add, the red line is the clinical significance for each measure. Okay. Which for fatigue severity is a reduction of 0.45 points.
So on that first one, you would say, adopting a new diet is healthy for your fatigue if you have MS.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now, the next line is the modified fatigue impact scale. And a change in a total of 4 points is clinically meaningful. And you'll see that, again, both the Wahls and Swank group, these are very, very potent p-values, less than 0.0001 all the way through. And at 12 weeks, although the Wahls has clinically much greater fatigue reduction, statistically, it's not really different than the Swank group. However, by the time you get to 24 weeks, again, you see that the Wahls group continue to have even more reduction in their fatigue, as they did with fatigue severity scale change. And now it is statistically and clinically more reduction in fatigue that was experienced by the Swank group.
Yeah, you can see those numbers. You can see how those things shift. So I guess what that kind of says to me is that ultimately the Wahls diet is having more impact, but also that you can have a significant impact if you keep going for 6 months.
Correct. That the longer you do, and this is what I see clinically in my practice, we've seen this in other research studies, the longer you stay on the diet, the more benefit you get. And of course, this makes a lot of sense physiologically, James, because as you're doing the chemistry of life correctly and your cells can rebuild you more correctly, molecule by molecule, structures improve. You have less damage in your brain, less microglia activation. And so to me, it's not surprising that the fatigue severity scale score continued to improve. The modified fatigue impact scale continued to improve. And then we'll talk about the quality of life score. So the quality of life, this is just an expanded short form 36 that has a few more questions that are MS specific. And again, the red line shows you clinical significance, which in the quality of life world is 5. So both Wahls and Swank are improved quality of life. Now, if you look at the Wahls group, that's about 14 at 12 weeks and 17 at 24 weeks. Now, that is a phenomenal improvement in quality of life. Absolutely phenomenal.
What would that look like? If you were friends with someone who went through that and experienced that, what would you notice about them when you saw them next?
Well, they're probably going to have better mood, more energy, and we can sort of see that because fatigue is reduced, that's having a big impact on quality of life. I predict that they're going to be more willing to have social engagements. They'll be more willing to do walks, gradually increasing their physical activity levels. And so in the overall, and when you look at the quality of life measures, those are the kinds of things that we're asking about. Their activities of daily life. Are they taking walks? Can they walk a block? Can they walk several blocks? Can they climb the stairs? Can they do moderate household tasks such as moving furniture or vacuuming and sweeping?
Is that a validated metric by like the MS, powers that be? Okay,
yes. These are apps. All of the measures that we used are validated in peer-reviewed scientific research. They are measures that the MS Society makes available for clinical researchers, which is exactly the reasons that we are using them. We want to use measures that are validated and been peer-reviewed. Absolutely.
Beautiful. This is amazing. So
I have another one.
Yeah, tell me.
So let's take the next one. So the MS quality of life, mental health. It's here that again, okay, we got to go back. The red lines is clinical significance. So Swank did not achieve clinical significance. The Wahls was remarkably clinically significant. That would be about 12. And then about 14 at 24 weeks. And then again, it is statistically different at 24 weeks. And then at 24 weeks, the Wahls group is just, meets clinical significance at that point. So very, very exciting there. The next, and again, so what does that show up? Less anxiety, less depression, less irritability, better mental focus. The next box is the is the 6-minute walk test. And we had asked people not to change their exercise while they were in our study, because we were trying to measure the impact of diet. And so it's not surprising at 12 weeks, while the Swank group didn't really change, the Wahls group changed maybe just a little bit, but neither one was statistically significant. What is interesting is at 24 weeks, the Wahls group did improve and was now statistically, clinically improved and statistically improved from the observation period.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I mean, I can't believe that I don't know if you know the answer to this, but it seems like it wouldn't be normally a measure that dietary interventions will be looking to move.
No, absolutely. So, it takes time for motor changes to happen because, you have to rebuild the muscle mass, and no exercise person is going to expect you to get stronger without exercise.
Yeah.
No one's going to expect you to have greater walking endurance without exercising, without doing some sort of physical training. And so the fact that we're able to show people could walk farther and just by changing their diet, that's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
That's a very big deal.
Well,
that's a very big deal.
Thank you for sharing that, and I'm hoping that people who are watching it, can get excited about it. So, what does this open up? I know that every step that you've taken has led you to more and more. Like, where does this take you from here, and where do we go from there?
We're doing all sorts of really wonderful things. So we have a trial going on right now that is comparing basically doing a diet, the Wahls diet, a meditation program, and walking program without drugs to people receiving standard of care. And the people who are doing diet and lifestyle without drugs declined drugs because they wanted to see what effect diet and lifestyle would do. And that was a criteria to be enrolled. Newly diagnosed MS person who's been offered drugs but has declined that and wants to use diet and lifestyle. That's the intervention arm. The control arm is people newly diagnosed taking the standard of care. And we're just following people in those two arms. It's what's called quasi-experimental. It's non-randomized, and we're prospectively seeing what's happening. We were going to be able to have people enroll, get MRIs, and see what happened to the brains. Pandemic happened, so we're not able to do that. We instead are abstracting the clinical records, and we'll see what happens in the MRIs based on the clinical records over time. And we are abstracting a cohort of patients diagnosed at the University of Iowa and treated with standard of care during that same time period. And so that'll be basically a 3-arm study, and we'll see what we see from that. The other two big things that are happening is we have a study in front of the IRB, and not yet approved, but it's gone through the IRB meeting, and I'm sure we'll have a list of things that they want us to tweak to get final approval. But I'm hopeful that we will be enrolling people in a study that will look at our online course that we have and how going through the online course impacts dietary quality, fatigue, measures of mood, and measures of quality of life. And so that will probably be starting this fall. And then we've written an application, and we anticipate getting approval for another dietary study that will be in person and will include MRIs that will compare the Wahls diet, a ketogenic diet, and dietary guidelines. So we've got those things going on. We have a training program for clinicians. We have a practitioner day, and that will be in October 16th. And we have learned that we had to take our in-person public seminar when the pandemic happened to move it to a virtual seminar. And so we'll be running virtual seminars for the public again in 2022.
Beautiful. Hey, well, look, thank you so much for coming and sharing. This year at the Evolution of Medicine, our word for the year is the reinvention of medicine. And so I'd love to just get your thoughts on that theme and that word and what it means to you to think about the reinvention of medicine.
I think for me, I had to keep reinventing the way I parented as I became progressively more disabled. And it turned out I was pretty effective because that reimagining my parenting as a disabled person allowed me to stay fully motivated to keep reading, researching, and doing all that I could. And then as I transformed how I thought about disease and health, and I am now thinking that diet and lifestyle are just key to restoring health. I'm in the VA. That is my clinical practice where I can't practice a traditional functional medicine approach. But I could still, I was like, okay, so how could I reinvent my primary care practice and the traumatic brain injury clinic with this new paradigm? But I was able to do so by focusing on diet and lifestyle and using just the very basic primary care labs that I could access in the VA system.
Yeah.
And then the question was, how do I do my research within the constraints that I have? So, I did the case study, the case series, and then we did very small pilot studies with the resources that I could have. So very small. And now, again, we continue to having to reimagine the research that we can do within the constraints of, okay, the pandemic. Oh, that was difficult, but we've got, a really very interesting, innovative study underway. We'll be done. We'll finish that in June, probably doing the analysis next summer or fall. So that's going to be very exciting.
That's great.
And so there's always opportunities. It takes some creativity and some thinking about what can I do with the limitations and resources that I have.
Beautiful. I love that. Well, look, it's a definition of the reinvention of medicine that's very Terry Wahls like, because you've done an incredible amount with very little. And I hope that these doors will open up a lot more to you to keep on the path that you're on and keep growing it, and maybe allowing this to become a standard of care for prevention and treatment of MS and even further beyond that.
It will absolutely happen. It's certainly the public, and I think it's going to be the public that drives this, James. It was the public that drove back in 2014, because they got so excited first by my TED Talk, then by my book, that the MS Society decided like they needed to have their wellness conference and then shift their research dollars to support some diet and lifestyle research. And now it's, again, the public that will demand, and we're already seeing that in the MS world, that the public is much more interested in talking to their physicians like, okay, what can I be doing about diet and lifestyle? Give me a referral for physical therapy. Can you give me a referral to learn more about diet? It will absolutely be the public that will demand and will begin to look for practitioners, either from their primary care practitioner or look for functional medicine practitioners, integrative medicine practitioners who can support them as they answer the question like, okay, am I really doing all that I can to change the direction of my healing journey? Am I doing all that I can to create more health in my life?
Interesting. Yeah. Well, look, I really think that's a great answer. And I think there's so much more to do. And I'm excited to be with you on this journey. Dr. Terry Wahls, thanks so much for being part of this special session. And if you're inspired by Dr. Wahls, plenty of places to get connected, including that practitioner education. So